March 4th, 2002, a Chinook staggers over Takur Ghar, bleeding smoke from an RPG strike. Neil Roberts is gone, fallen from the ramp into darkness 10,000 feet up. Within hours, 7 Americans will be dead on that ridge. Within days, British SAS operators will reduce the disaster to 5 words. All the gear, no idea. What happened on that mountain would remake American special operations from the ground up. Takur Ghar rises like a broken tooth above the Shyikott Valley, its summit buried in snow and darkness. At 0231 on March 4th, 2002, the MH-47E Chinook, callsign Super 64, begins its final approach loaded with SEAL Team 3 and Air Force Special Tactics. The plan is simple: land on the crest, set up an observation post, and call in air strikes. The mountain has other ideas. Enemy fighters dug into the north face open fire with a 12.7mm DSHK and RPGs. An RPG-7 streaks upward, slamming into the left skid. The blast mangles the main rotor hub and tears open the rear ramp. In the chaos, Petty Officer Neil Roberts, standing near the open ramp, is thrown clear 30 feet down into the snow, alone and exposed. The Chinook bucks and lurches, trying to climb, but the damage is too severe. The pilots force the crippled aircraft down the slope, searching for any patch of flat ground. In less than a minute, the helicopter crashes at lower altitude, killing the flight engineer and wounding others. Above, Roberts is now stranded at 10,000 feet, surrounded by enemy positions, his radio silent. The rescue clock has started. Every second on that ridge will cost lives. The mountain is no longer just a backdrop, it's a trap. And for Neil Roberts, the war has become a fight measured in heartbeats and ammunition, not plans or promises. 7 American names were added to the casualty rolls at Takur Ghar. Petty Officer Neil Roberts, thrown from the Chinook, fought alone on the ridge and died before help could reach him. Technical Sergeant John Chapman, Air Force Combat Controller, stayed behind under fire, directing airstrikes and holding the line even after being wounded. His actions would later earn the Medal of Honor. Army Rangers Bradley Crowes, Matthew Commons and Philip Svitak fell during the desperate rescue attempts. 2 other aircrew, James Miller and Scott Harris, were killed when the first Chinook crashed on the mountainside. Each death was recorded by the minute in the after-action logs. Each loss counted in seconds as the rescue unfolded. The official tally, 7 dead, many more wounded, became a point of reckoning. The Medal of Honor citation for John Chapman describes a man who refused to abandon his post, who called in fire on enemy positions until his last breath. The others died trying to reach each other, their efforts driven by a code that left no one behind, even when the ground was lost. After the bodies were recovered, a verdict arrived from an unexpected quarter. A classified British SAS memorandum circulated in June 2002 delivered a blunt assessment: all the gear, no idea. The phrase cut through the after-action reports and casualty lists. According to the SAS, American Special Operations had shown courage but relied too heavily on speed and firepower, not enough on patient reconnaissance. For the men who survived and for those who wrote the official histories, the cost of that night was measured not just in blood, but in the hard lesson that followed. The debate over what courage demands and what it costs had only begun. Marcus Cole sat hunched over his radio, headphones pressed tight, hands scribbling timestamps as the valley filled with static and panic. He was not on the ridge. His job was to listen. SIGACT net, command channel, bursts of coded chatter from the mountain above. The logs from that night read like a heartbeat gone wild. 2:31, first enemy fire. 2:32, man down. 2:36, mayday from the crash site. Cole's notes, later de-identified in the Navy's investigation, would become the backbone for reconstructing those minutes. But in the moment, all he could do was listen and wait. Nearby, Sergeant Thomas Brennan of the British SAS watched the rescue unfold with a different kind of tension. Brennan had seen this before, not in Afghanistan, but on the muddy roads of Sierra Leone. In 2000, a British extraction team had been ordered to wait, to hold back until the ground was scouted and the kill zone mapped. The team ignored the warning and launched a hasty rescue. 2 men died before the rest got out. Brennan never forgot the lesson. Patience could save lives, even when every instinct screamed to act. That night on Takur Ghar, Brennan shared the Sierra Leone story with Cole, his voice low, almost apologetic. The British had learned to let the situation ripen, to accept the agony of waiting if it meant bringing more men home. Cole, tracking the radio chaos from below, felt the American compulsion to move, to save, to do something, anything, rather than stand by. Brennan's words landed hard. Sometimes the aggressive choice is right, but it comes with a cost. As the minutes ticked by and the rescue force climbed toward the ridge, the difference between British patience and American urgency became more than a tactical debate. It was a matter of survival. The radio logs kept rolling, the mountain kept its own counsel. Cole's pen hovered over his logbook, the ink stuttering as the radio static faded. Sergeant Brennan stood beside him, boots planted in the churned mud, hands tucked into his jacket. The night pressed in thick with the memory of Sierra Leone and the sound of gunships circling a mountain that refused to give up its dead. Brennan's story, told in a voice stripped of bravado, lingered in the cold air. He spoke of a rescue that cost British lives, of a lesson paid for twice, once in West Africa, and now again here. Cole searched for a defence, for some way to separate American sacrifice from British caution. But Brennan only nodded, eyes fixed on the darkness above Takur Ghar. Then came 4 words, almost an afterthought, same as ours then. The phrase landed heavier than any accusation, no mockery, no gloating, just a quiet admission that courage and loss are universal, and that mistakes repeat themselves when pride outruns patience. Cole's hands tightened around his headset. The radio was silent now, but the cost of each decision still echoed. He looked at Brennan, hoping for some gesture of comfort or camaraderie, and found only a slow, understanding nod. Cole would remember that moment longer than the firefight. The line, same as ours then, became a private verdict, a challenge to do better, to listen before acting, to weigh every risk as if the mountain were waiting. In that pause, Cole absorbed the lesson not as a rebuke, but as a shared burden. The path forward would demand more than gear or aggression. It would require humility to learn from another's scars. By late 2004, the habits of Takur Ghar were being tested in new battle spaces. In Fallujah, SEAL Team 3 abandoned the urge for immediate action, instead spending 11 nights in silent observation. They mapped enemy positions, tracked vehicle routes, and passed intelligence to the Marines. The result? 3 friendly fire incidents averted, dozens of lives saved, and not a single SEAL lost. Their after-action reports no longer read like a list of last stands, but as proof that patience could be lethal in its own right. 2 years later, in the mountains of eastern Afghanistan, the doctrine held. Under Cole's leadership, SEALs logged 37 direct action missions in 7 months, 0 friendly casualties. Each operation began with days of pattern-of-life surveillance, and teams were empowered to abort if the ground shifted. Mission logs from 2006 show a new willingness to wait, to gather, to strike only when the margin for error was acceptable. By 2008 in Baghdad, the approach matured again. SEALs hunted al-Qaeda not by storming doors, but by dismantling networks, tracking couriers, financiers, and safe houses. The hunt was slower, but the results were surgical. These 3 deployments, documented in classified after-action reports and mission logs, showed that the lessons of Roberts Ridge had taken root. Aggression was no longer the only answer. Intelligence, restraint, and the authority to abort had become pillars of the SEAL playbook. On the night of May 2, 2011, 2 MH-60 Blackhawks crossed into Pakistani airspace, flying low and fast toward a walled compound in Abbottabad. The assault force, SEAL Team 6, supported by CIA paramilitary officers and JSOC planners, had rehearsed every movement for weeks, drilling on a full-scale replica built in North Carolina. Intelligence analysts from the CIA and the NSA had mapped the target's daily rhythm, tracked couriers, and assembled a precise pattern of life profile. Aerial surveillance from drones and satellites fed live updates into the command post. Every contingency, from a crash to an armed response, had a plan. The helicopters touched down inside the compound at 0030 local time. 40 minutes later, the SEALs emerged with the body of Osama bin Laden, hard drives and documents. Not a single American was lost. The entire raid, from breach to exfiltration, unfolded with a discipline that left no room for improvisation. The success was not just in the outcome, but in the method: intelligence preparation, rehearsals, and the authority to abort at any stage. The lessons of Takur Ghar, patient surveillance, joint planning, the fusion of British caution and American resolve, had become doctrine. The mountain's cost was paid forward in every detail. Abbottabad was proof. Courage untethered from preparation is not enough, but when patience and aggression move together, even the hardest target can fall. Today, every American Special Operations mission carries the weight of Roberts Ridge, proof that valor alone is never enough. Doctrine now fuses British patience with American aggression. The mountain carved that lesson in blood. In special operations, the cost of forgetting is always paid in lives. Share your thoughts below.